What is up, everyone? Welcome to this week's NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host and dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the endangered Robert Woods, an astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rogers. And I am joined today by some of the nerds. We have resident old man, vice secretary of the Sam Darnold Hype Train Railroad LLC, and the duck father, Clark Barnes, and founder and lone member of the Devontae Adams' Average Club and devout follower of the Anthony Lynn running back gospel, the Ginger Woodsman, Nick Botiford. How are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Good, Pete. The Devontae Adams nickname has aged even better now that I'm the only one who's got him as a wide receiver one.
It has a lot of longevity to it. I will say it's definitely now that everything is settled in Green Bay. The joke it hits on multiple levels now. I have to say, which is always good. Nick, talk to me again. Your mic sounded low. Say some words. Talk about how your day was. Talk about how great your hair looks right now.
My hair is up. I don't know if it's great, but it is up. Does this make things better?
That was no, you were good. You were good there. You can.
This is good.
Oh,
or would you like
great.
me to?
That's great. I mean, you can put it wherever you want, but I think it was also partially my speakers weren't loud enough. This is quality content to start the show. Needless to say. Let's jump right in. We got lots of news to cover, and we're, of course, going to talk tight ends because it is tight end week on the site, and so we're going to cover the position as we always do with our little deep dives. But like I said, we're going to start with the news because we got a lot of it, and headlined by Carson Wentz being out for up to 12 weeks now. He had foot surgery, and I'm sure our resident doctor, Nick Botiford, can fill us in on what exactly all of the goodness was being done to his foot and exactly what happened. But the Colts were worried about this. It happened last week. They held him out of practice. They went and saw a specialist. They went and got surgery. And it's a 5 to 12 week timeline. It seems like there have been lots of reports now. The Colts are not going to go out and trade for a veteran quarterback. It is not Nick Foles. It is not Gardner Minshew. They are sticking with Jacob Eason, I guess, as until Wentz comes back and healthy. Obviously, this throws a big wrench in the Colts offense. Nick, you broke it down on Twitter just shortly, so I'll let you start us off. How are you approaching drafting the Colts offense now in fantasy with Carson Wentz missing 2 months of the NFL season? Maybe.
I mean, it could be 1 week. Right. It could be 1 week,
but it could be 2 months. Longer.
So funny point about Jake Easton is I was looking at his workout numbers, 27.5 inch vertical. That is bad for an offensive lineman. Like that is, I kind of did a double take at that. That is 4 inches below, awful. So that was that. Yeah, that was really funny. But, I was reading some stuff by Gene Bramall from Football Guys, and one thing that stood out to me was that after this surgery occurs and after Carson Wentz has been able to recover, he should leave these issues behind, judging by what the surgery is thought to be repairing. It shouldn't be an issue for him in the future. So that was hopeful. So he said that the injury issues should be behind him, but he may be sore and he'll probably play with an orthotic, which, I mean, it's a lot better than, you think about you have to go through rehab for an ACL tear or whatever. It doesn't sound like this is going to be something that he has to spend a bunch of time actually preparing to play again. He can just resume playing after this short window is done. So there's room for optimism there. But yeah, I mean, if it is the long-term one, the thing is that we don't know. All we know is that a bone was broken in, I think, high school. He played with it broken forever. It got knocked loose. And then there's this question as to whether or not there's ligament damage. And one, if there is ligament damage, and two, how bad it is. And so I think that's why it's is it 5 weeks? Is it just bone, or is there ligament damage, and so it's 12, and we just don't know.
Yeah. Clark, how are you adjusting your draft strategy when it comes to Colts offense?
So it's a thing to watch, and the story just broke today, and we have some good analysis, and that like Dr. Gene and Porras are talking about the potential of what it could be. Right now, about 5 to 12 weeks, which is a gigantic span. 5 weeks is really nothing to worry about, Nick. Like you said, it's missing 1 week. 12 weeks is very serious, and this is a Colts offense which was already kind of on the razor's edge. New quarterback. We're curious about what it's going to look like. There's a lot of guys on this team we like, mainly Jonathan Taylor, but also Nyheim Hines, Michael Pittman. There's a lot of interesting names, and this is just not great news for them. You mentioned the reports now are that the Colts are not trading for someone, and that is technically true, as reported by Chris Mortensen. But that's just one of those, while the Carson Wentz injury is news, the tweet from Chris Mortensen saying the Colts are not trading for anyone right now.
Definitive statement.
Yeah, no shit, they're not trading for someone right now, and that could change in 5 minutes, and they should trade for someone. If it's 5 to 12 weeks, that could be up to a third of the season. And, Eason is not probably the answer. And there are decent quarterbacks out there probably available for a decent price. Even allowing Carson Wentz more time to rehab if the injury isn't super serious is going to be beneficial for the Colts because of the way that they worked the Carson Wentz trade. If Carson Wentz sits out for a certain smaller percentage of the season, then it's a second round pick instead of a first round pick. So there's lots of reasons I think that Nick Foles is in play, Jimmy Garoppolo is in play. There's, why not take Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock, whoever doesn't win that one. So I don't think the story's written yet. It's a downgrade, and it's something to watch because the story just broke. In a week, we may have a lot better information about what to expect for a timeline. And that's when I'm going to really react to the auxiliary Colts like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, who I'm both pretty high on.
Yeah. So I think it's a 2 to 3 week window from the surgery. So for us to get a better impression, but I don't think that they want to bring in anybody else. The signing that they did was Brett Hundley.
Yep.
If Wentz plays 75% of snaps, they got to give up a first to Philadelphia, right? If he doesn't play 75% of the snaps, it's just a second. And I said earlier, it might just be 1 week of the season, but if there's any reason for them to sit him and get him at only 70% of games, this is a shrewd organization. These are the guys. Yeah. Jim Irsay is the guy who went through a 1 and whatever season with Curtis Painter so that they could get Andrew Luck the next year.
Curtis Painter.
Right? I think this is a group that is smart enough to say, you know what, we're going to keep that first round pick. Let's not trade for anybody. We got Jacob Eason in here. And yeah, I will be surprised unless there is a supreme value that becomes available. I don't think that they're going to add one of these mid to low guys like Gardner Minshew, Teddy Bridgewater, that kind of a group. Cause I think that just keeps them in limbo.
No. For me, the biggest impact that this has right off the bat is it kind of completely diminishes my T.Y. Hilton hype. I think he was a really saucy sleeper just because of he put together a solid, and this is always the thing that surprises me. And so I went back and when I look back and look from week 12 onward last year, he was the wide receiver 10 in half point PPR. I think that was obviously came from, I think he had a couple really big games and that boosted his total scoring, but that's obviously elite production from a receiver for a solid period of time. And you're changing a quarterbacks. And I think that there was room for T.Y. Hilton, maybe going as a wide receiver 50, I think, or something in that territory of outplaying that ADP. And now I'm not going to be drafting T.Y. Hilton. I probably won't be. I wasn't particularly high on Michael Pittman Jr. either. But him, I think he's more locked in as the number one wide receiver there, and thus is going to see the most amount of work. And he's a bigger body who's young, and that kind of Jacob Eason, maybe has a connection there. But you made a good point, Clark, where it's unless you've already drafted or you're drafting in the next weeks, then you should panic. But most people aren't going to be drafting for another 4 or 5 weeks. And that's plenty of time to really see what's the Colts going to do? What is this offense going to, look like? We'll have some preseason games under our belt to see what maybe preferences Jacob Eason has, yada, yada, yada. I think the time is not yet to panic about the Colts offense, but certainly something to monitor as we move further into the offseason and into the preseason.
Yeah, an absolute fallout of this is it moves Carson Wentz from an interesting, very late QB2 Superflex option to he's waiver wire or someone else is going to get him.
Yeah, not touching him. Speaking of surgery, the Michael Thomas saga in New Orleans doesn't seem to be over yet, as Sean Payton voiced frustrations with Thomas last week about not getting the ankle surgery earlier, the one that's going to hold him out for a little bit of time. Add to this, Deontay Harris getting arrested for a DUI in the offseason, which normally comes with a 2-game suspension. The Saints go and sign Devonta Freeman off the free agent. Seems like the Saints are just going to run the ball 50 times and call it a day with Taysom Hill under center, which of course is terrible for Clark's in my wheel bet. I will then lose that, which will be upsetting to me. But the saucy thing that I just feel like it seems as though the relationship between the Saints and Michael Thomas is on thin ice, given Michael Thomas last year punched a dude and was suspended for that, and also kind of came back early and then got this ankle injury surgery done late. Like I heard someone reference the Scottie Pippen did the exact same thing when he was kind of pissed off with the team, with the Bulls, where he delayed his surgery when he was playing for the Bulls to like kind of stick it to the team so that he would miss time during contract negotiations. I think Michael Thomas might be a saucy name if this kind of if he doesn't really see the field until really middle to late end of the season. He might be a saucy name that the Saints might be a trade name that gets batted about. But anyways, that's my own personal vibe.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the Saints are smart enough to trade Michael Thomas for Melvin Gordon in a second? Maybe
definitely do it right now,
a la the Houston Texans and David Johnson.
Yeah. Do it right now. Get all of the running backs on your roster. The Denver Broncos would just be absolutely loaded at wide receiver, and you love to see that.
Yeah. I don't want to defend any group of people just inherently, but have a big process problem with coaches being upset with players' medical decisions and us maybe not knowing the entire story about sometimes players try to rehab things because they don't want to have surgery because that can have lasting implications for their entire lives. And I don't know the story here, but just in general, really don't like it when coaches, especially a coach like Peyton, who pops off a lot. Sean
Payton says a lot of shit about his players.
So Dr. Jesse Morse, I think it was, and Dr. David Chow were both opining on this last week. It seems as though, like from what I was hearing from them, Michael Thomas was given the instruction that he could try to rehab it for like a month, and after that he would need to have surgery. He was working with a private doctor, so not the New Orleans Saints team doctor. And Dr. Morse was really interesting because he treats, or so he claims, treats a number of NFL players, or a lot of NFL players in Florida. And I'm not going to try to go into it too much here, but he talked a lot about how, I guess, from his observations in terms of player psychology and who they do and don't trust with their bodies and that kind of stuff. And like, if you spoil a relationship as a medical professional, they will stop listening to what you have to say, that kind of a thing. So he had some interesting things to say as a person who's got experience in this field on that matter. But evidently Thomas was told that he needed to have a surgery within a month or at a 4-week period. And instead he tried to rehab it on his own for, I think, like 3 months, and showed up, and the team doctors, looked at him and said, what the hell? Well, this was supposed to have been done 2 months ago. Like you're nowhere near being able to play. So yeah, I mean, it's clear that Sean Payton was really mad. Like I don't know if you listeners took the time to watch the video of him, but he was
not pleased.
Yeah. And he was asked to expand on it, and he just kept it at, it should have happened already. Yeah, so the surgery or the injury rather, it seems pretty cut and dried what was supposed to be done, and Michael Thomas didn't do it. And we can get into the idea of like, well, should a player operate if they do or don't want to? What I mean here is that it seems as though there's a like you do this surgery for this injury or you don't, and it's not going to heal. But it's either or.
It seems like there's a rift growing between Thomas and the team. From a fantasy standpoint, is there anyone you're confidently drafting outside of Alvin Kamara on the Saints this year?
Latavius.
Yeah,
I mean, he might get like 15 touches a week.
Yeah, yes, he might be you said this, you tweeted this out, Nick, when news broke that the Saints signed Devonta Freeman, you were like, are they just going to play Alvin Kamara at wide receiver? And it's like, maybe they will. Maybe Alvin Kamara is their new slot receiver, and it's going to be Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman in that backfield as their actual running backs, which would be, hey, bold, I guess, but you make do with what you've got, because right now it's like Traquan Smith, Adam Kaufman, and that's it, right? Adam Troutman. Kaufman is a writer. Why is that name?
And that's going to be super interesting, right? Because last year he was like the third best run blocker in PFF's database. Right. Troutman was, but they've got another tight end. They got Nick Vannett, old Seahawks draft pick, who theoretically is going to take on the blocking role. It's up in the air. Troutman's one of those like, hey, worth a late tight end flyer that may or may not. I mean, he could get 12 targets a game or something absurd, but it's tough to say.
Hard to say. All right, finally in the news, it is still prevalent in the world. It's still prevalent in the NFL. COVID has reared its ugly head early before games have even started. Both Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins, actually like the entire Vikings quarterback room, is tested positive for COVID, and thus are away from the field and away from practices. Hopefully they are recovering well, and hopefully there won't be any lingering effects. Hopefully they did everything that they could have done ahead of time to prevent them catching COVID. But that's a personal decision. One that you probably should make. But that's something certainly to monitor as we go in. I am not too worried about the situation for either of these guys. Lamar Jackson did catch COVID and did miss a game last year. So this is a dual hit for him, which is again, like lasting impact. We don't really know. But at the moment, to me, it's just something to monitor. It's just a reminder that COVID is out there, and we will still, despite the fact that there is a vaccine, despite the fact that it's been a year and some change now, it will still be a prevalent part of the 2021 NFL season. And so prepare as such.
I think the biggest thing for our purposes to take away from this is how this impacts player availability. The NFL policy of if a player is vaccinated and they test positive, they can return within a day or two if they have back-to-back negative tests. If an unvaccinated player tests positive, they are mandatorily away from the team for 10 days. That could be 2 games. Yeah. So for that reason, it's important for fantasy managers to pay attention to who is getting vaccinated or is vaccinated and who isn't. Evidently, Lamar, I don't think he has been vaccinated. Or, well, we know that because he's not at practice. Right. So Lamar Jackson's on that list. Believe DeAndre Hopkins. I moved DeAndre Hopkins one spot down behind A.J. Brown today with this in mind. I think, and like we can choose to get into whether players should get vaccinated or not, but for our purposes and the way that this impacts us as fantasy players, having a possible 10-day suspension just because you breathed in the wrong area, that's a really big deal, and we do want to take note of that.
Yeah. Still things to monitor, which another good if you are wanting to make this a real part of your drafting strategy. Also, the NFL has, I think it's if you are not vaccinated and you are doing any kind of in front of the press, you have to wear a mask. So anyone wearing a mask, pretty good indicator of their vaccination status, unless they're just being super safe, which they might be. I still wear masks when I go into the market, for instance, because better to be safe than it is to be sorry, my friends. All right, that's the NFL news. Before we move on to talk some tight ends, if you enjoy the podcast and the website and want to support us, we have a Patreon. patreon.com/nerdballff. And we offer all kinds of perks for those who subscribe. We've got a Discord channel to talk football, around the clock starts and sit advice, play in a league with us this year, see if you can beat us, all kinds of goodies. Plus, during the season, we want to have a mailbag section on the podcast where we answer your questions. So if you want to make sure your most pressing questions make it onto the show during the NFL season, consider supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff. All right, we're wrapping up position weeks. It's the final one, tight ends. A position that actually we know that there's this cream of the crop. And then I spent way too much time today trying to figure out like the 4 through 15 rankings, because you could really make like narratives for everyone and anyone. And it was a hard thing to kind of like whittle through all of this kind of like middle clump of guys as to exactly what the orders they're going to finish. So to help us do that, we're going to go through the tight end position in 4 tiers, as we always do. We're going to talk about our top tight ends to target in the first 5 rounds, top tight end target in the 11th round or later, a tight end we're avoiding, and then a bold prediction for the position. And let us start putting our money where our mouth is. And Nick, why don't you start us off with who's your big spender at the tight end position this year?
My big spender is in my notes, and I'm looking at it now. And
blow by blow, I like it. The listeners are.
Oh yeah. So I had a tough time with this one because they're like the big group of guys at ADP, or if one slips a couple spots below, are absolute steals. So Kelce last year, his total. So for my answer, it's the big 4. I look at that group as Kelce, Waller, Kittle, and Pitts in that order. Kelce last year would have finished, if you took away his positional tag and just like flexed him, he would have finished as both the running back and wide receiver 4. For Waller, he was both the running back and wide receiver 8. That's in 0.5 PPR scoring. Given their positional value, right, where it's like this onesie position, and there are so few guys that could actually produce like that, it's almost irresponsible to allow a tight end to pass you by at this like 1-2 turn for Kelce, or is it, I think, 2-3 for Waller. You're going to be able to get a wide receiver that can, like, if I pass on Stephon Diggs, I can get Tyreek Hill, or if I pass on Hill, I can get Diggs. If you can win at this position, you have a huge edge on your opposition. And this is a new thing for me. I previously had always been interested in trying to platoon my way to a top 12 performance. I understand now that production just is not replicable. And so if you are, if someone reaches for Kelce, okay, shoot, just keep your eyes open for Waller and so on. If you come to ADP and one of these guys are there, just take them.
Yeah. Clark, why don't you go? Because I know you have lots to add about specifically Darren Waller this year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Nick here. This is not a deep position, and what separates 1 from 2 and 2 from 3, and more importantly, 1 from 6 is huge. Travis Kelce had 9 PPR points per game, more than the tight end 5 last year.
That's insane.
There's no other position that's close to that.
Insane.
Christian McCaffrey only played 3 games and had 5 touchdowns in 3 games and is the only person in that ballpark. And if you want to be fair, number 1 tight end to number 10 tight end, bigger gap than Christian McCaffrey to the number 10 running back. Fantasy is a week-to-week game, 99.9% of the positions. And if you're forced to play a tight end, you will get an edge over most of your opponents if you take Kelce, Waller. For me, it's Kelce, Waller, Kittle, Andrews, and I think that's it, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Pitts isn't in that group. Pitts is in the group of like he might, right? We don't know. I think Hawkinson is like a super boring. I don't recommend doing it, but like who else are they going to throw the ball to target? Waller, I like where his ADP is a little bit more, even though I would take Kelce at like 102. Just I think that that's a good move and solid. Waller's going in the second and third round, so you're just getting an absolute smash value there. You're going to have an advantage over everyone except the Travis Kelce owner. And, any Sunday, Waller might catch a touchdown and Kelce might be held without one. So Waller is a big target for me this year, but echoing what Nick said, there is no substitute for drafting one of these guys this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think Nick said it well, which is just like, it is not, what did you say? You said it well, and then I forgot what you said, but basically that it's irresponsible. There it is. Irresponsible to not take one of these top guys. Like, it's irresponsible to not invest in the tight end position if you have the opportunity to, just given the discrepancy between the top 2, 3, however many guys you want to put in there. Like, it's no more than 4, in my opinion, just because the tight end position has never shown itself to be a more than like 3 really position in order to like top fantasy performers. So unsurprisingly, I take some guff with Clark not putting Kyle Pitts in his top 4, because of course Kyle Pitts is the man that I have to talk about. He is my big spender this year because I love me some Kyle Pitts. And here's what I'll say about him. He's a 6'6", 245-pound man who runs a 4.44 40 and has the workout metrics of a wide receiver, which funnily enough is basically what he'll be playing in 2021, as he's going to replace Julio Jones all over the field, according to Falcons coaches who've already started to let that out into the media and tell the people what we want to hear. You're drafting a wide receiver as your tight end, and that, my friends, is called a competitive advantage. And so going in the 4th round, I will take Kyle Pitts, no questions asked. I will take him in the 3rd round. I will take him in the 2nd round. I will take Kyle Pitts. I have him ranked ahead of, actually, I just re-updated my tight end rankings, and I want to give Patty a shout out. Well, I'll shout him out later, but Patty, you're going to get some love on this show. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller. That's my top 4 tight ends. And I'm fully in on Kyle Pitts this year. I just think that he's a human marvel and will do things that we did not anticipate the position ever doing.
Yeah, and I won't argue against Kyle Pitts. The reason that he's not up there for me is just the old manitude of rookies have a hard time adjusting to the NFL. We haven't seen it. To make the argument that this is the prototype of someone who may overcome that is absolutely accurate. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just gets peppered with so many targets that he becomes a value. And so I don't mind it at all, but I do keep moving Pitts down a position here or there just because it's the unseen. Yeah. And betting on the unseen can harvest tremendous value for your fantasy team, but it can also end up with egg on your face. And if Pitts is 2 rounds after Mark Andrews, well, then I'm all in. But he's going before Mark Andrews. And so just for me, I just know that he's not going to end up on a bunch of my teams.
And I mean, and it's a position where, like, in the NFL history, like, it's just not a position where rookies do anything. Like, there's a huge learning curve. You're not a vocal part of the offense. And so it takes a while for you to get integrated. It gets a while for like that, all that to solidify. It's not until really like year 3 that we see tight ends truly kind of step out and break out. And so it's a lot to put on Kyle Pitts' shoulders, but how the Falcons are seemingly going to use him and how he's built and the athletic profile that he has seems to project that if you treat him as a wide receiver, he very easily can finish a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy, which would instantly make him a top 3 tight end.
To the point about it taking a little while for these players to develop, do you guys know who the most productive tight end is for a rookie in their rookie season?
I do, because I'm going to make a bold prediction about it, but it's Mike Ditka.
Okay. It's Mike Ditka. So it's understandable to be very nervous about this, which is why I guess I would excitedly draft Pitts at ADP, not in the 2nd round. There are some unknowns. I mean, I obviously think the world of Arthur Smith. We don't quite know like how he's going to use him. Is he going to feature him like Jonnu Smith, which is to say not necessarily as featured, or is he going to ask the guy who played a bunch of X receiver in college to fill in for some of the lost Julio snaps? Probably the smart choice of playing him like Julio. We don't know. But yeah, I would. The range of outcomes seems high enough that taking him in the top 4 rounds seems like a great move. I wouldn't take him earlier than 4, but yeah.
I think I'll say it, the last thing I'll say on Pitts is I think that there is a very good chance that come like week 8, ESPN seriously considers revoking his tight end status and just making him a wide receiver because of where he plays, because the competitive edge that he gives you, in the way that they were like, Taysom Hill playing quarterback shouldn't be a tight end. But that 1 week where you had him, it was glorious. All right, let's move on to some. Oh, go ahead, Clark.
Joe Webb that got that eligibility like week 16 5 years ago.
Oh my
gosh.
And then
did nothing. Anyway,
I mean, I love me some Joe Webb. I just remember him coming in for the Vikings and beating the Packers on like Monday Night Football.
And the next week was the fantasy playoffs.
And then
it was like,
you're like, no, thank you. Yeah, I remember that was like back in, I think that was during the Brett Favre years, back when Brett Favre was quarterback for the Vikings. Anyways, let's move on to some value buys at tight end, even though we talked about how you should never be drafting value buys at tight end.
Can we go thrift shopping?
So no thrift shopping this week, Macklemore. But we'll still talk about them because I have to touch on this guy, Irv Smith Jr. for the Vikings. There's been a lot of hype already kind of bubbling up around him. But I have to give some love to our Patty Cooper at nerdballff.com, who's come up with this NECC rating, which is a metric that shows players who are super consistent on a weekly basis and also hyper efficient with their touches. And so he's done this whole calculation to put this all nicely and neatly in one number that you can use, and definitely go check it out. He's done it for the tight ends, for the wide receivers, and for running backs. And it's a great tool to kind of see where a player who maybe doesn't see a lot of work, but is hyper efficient and very consistent with his work, if that play time increases, that they could take a big step and be a really big fantasy contributor. Irv Smith fits the role of that. He was graded as the 4th best tight end last year among tight ends who had played at least 7 games, behind Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Jared Cook, surprisingly. With no Kyle Rudolph there to challenge for targets, he's going to be their number 1 tight end, and that is what they are planning and wanting him to be. There is a limited target tree in Minnesota. We've talked about that a lot in terms of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and how outside of them, is there really enough room to support a 3rd wide receiver, or even really to support those 2 wide receivers. But we have seen this offense produce top 10 tight ends multiple times before. Kyle Rudolph was the tight end 8 in half-point PPR in 2018. He was the tight end 7 in 2017. And then in 2016, he was the tight end 2 in half-point PPR. And so there is potential here where Irv Smith can come in, be hyper efficient, which he has been in the past, with this increased workload that he's going to see with no Kyle Rudolph, and finish as, I think I have him ranked as like my tight end 7 right now, and finish as a top option. Again, I don't think he's going to challenge those top 3 guys, but he is going tight end 16 in the 13th round. If I'm waiting on tight end, he's going to be the guy who I'm buying, because he seems to me have the biggest potential to give you a top 5 return.
Pete walking us through why I fell in love with Kyle Rudolph.
I mean, Kyle Rudolph is the tight end 2 in 2016. Good Lord. Who remember that?
The offense is intriguing to target a tight end there. And Irv Smith is an intriguing athletic guy. And by the offense, I mean the Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan style offense. The tight end can be incredibly productive if the coach and quarterback decide that they're going to be. And Irv Smith has all the talent in the world to take advantage of something like that if he gets the opportunity.
So last year, Dalvin Cook was healthy, or he played in 14 games, which I think Mike Leone at some point in time was talking about how 14 was the average number of games played for top 12 running backs. So at that, like, peak number, just targets on the Vikings last year: 128 for Jefferson, 111 Thielen, 55 Cook, 47 Irv Smith, and 38 for Kyle Rudolph. Okay, I'm going to add in there Tyler Conklin at 27. The point being, I don't think that, like, basically Irv Smith has to beat out Dalvin Cook for the number 3 target job. He can probably do that, because I think, maybe he can, maybe he can't. Clark and I are obviously kind of cool on Cook just because of the re-injury rate of that shoulder, but it's still like you're betting on a tight end that's not in a pass happy offense. This team, uniquely stayed, I think, bottom 7 in early down passing rate, no matter the score. Like they just don't really throw the ball a lot. I'm not seeing enough volume here in this offense for me to want Irv Smith.
Sorry, Bert was eating our toilet paper roll in our bathroom. Did you add though the targets that Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph got? Because together that's like 70 targets.
So what I would then do is I would go and look through. I think it's a little higher than that, but I would go look through and see how often the second tight end on this team ends up getting a decent amount of targets. I think it's pretty frequently a la Irv Smith getting enough to tease us over the last couple of years. I think Tyler Conklin is going to siphon targets away. I think it's going to be ugly. Irv Smith may produce as like a back end tight end 1. I've got him in like the 20s. This one's tough for me.
Kyle Rudolph saw 82 targets in 2018, 81 in 2017. I think Irv Smith can see that and be more productive with those targets than Kyle Rudolph can. And Kyle Rudolph was a top 8 tight end in those years. We'll see. Clark, why don't you give us your thrift shopper at the position?
I think while we go through our values, you're going to see why we led with draft one of the studs.
Yes.
Let your league mates squint and look through at just the right angle and just the right time of day and tell the story, which could be an absolutely accurate and plausible story about why their guy is going to be, I'm just going to kill it. I'm going to magically find the guy who's going to do it. And you might. And my guy who fits that perspective is Gerald Everett. I think I just started reading about Gerald Everett's life and just kind of fell in love and then looked at the situation and thought, yep, that could happen. And that's what Gerald Everett is. He transferred high schools as going into his senior year, and he used to play basketball, at his old high school. And he apparently went to some prep school that had an excellent basketball team. They're like, you're not going to play basketball here. Giant dude, even in high school. And the high school coach said, hey, you should play football. Played tight end. Went to community college for a year, and then went to UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham. And then they shut the program down after his first year. So he had to transfer again. He went to another small Alabama school where he kind of broke out, had like 1,200 some odd yards and like 13, 14 touchdowns in a couple of years. He's drafted second by the Rams, or in the second round by the Rams, pick 44. So just absolute stunning athletic specimen. And then each year in Los Angeles with the Rams, saw more targets, more yards, put up more production, even splitting time with Tyler Higbee the last year. Rams let him walk, and he went to the team who also hired the Rams' former passing game coordinator this year for their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, I believe. And so Everett is set to play with Russell Wilson, who's made the tight end position total for the Seahawks very valuable. We've gotten really excited about guys we'd never heard about until we heard that they were going to be playing with Russell Wilson in week 6. And he's made those guys viable. Gerald Everett, absolute marvel athletically, started playing tight end late, former basketball player. Stop me if you've heard this before, but this is the fun narrative about a tight end who might break out. To be fair, it's also the fun narrative we told ourselves about Mo Alley Cox. It's the narrative we've told ourselves about a lot of guys who just don't ever develop. But going into year 5 with Seattle, with Russell Wilson, if things just don't break right and I miss out on these guys, I'm definitely going to take Gerald Everett as my backup plan at tight end.
And he's going according to Fantasy Football Calculator, the literal last pick. He's going around 15, pick 11, the tight end 23. He's 100% free.
If I have any clout in this industry, which I think we will see this year that I do not, I just want to push Gerald Everett up 2 spots.
2 spots. If Gerald Everett goes as the tight end when September 9th comes around, which is the first weekend of NFL football, if by September 9th, Gerald Everett is going as the tight end 21 on Fantasy Football Calculator. Clark has significant clout in the fantasy.
I might
football
retire.
community. Clark, the site might be done. We might just close up shop and just call it quits because that is the pinnacle that we're going to reach. Again, you said it perfectly, Clark, where it's like the guys we're talking about in this segment for the tight ends are ones where, like, if you squint right, you can make the story. I don't even think you need to squint that hard for Gerald Everett. Like, we have seen this, Russell Wilson loves targeting tight ends, especially around the red zone. And this is going to be the most athletic tight end since Jimmy Graham that he has had. And Jimmy Graham was a top producing tight end when playing with Russell Wilson in the Seahawks offense. And so I think Gerald Everett coming to Seattle to play with the best quarterback he's had, who likes targeting tight ends, and under the offensive coordinator that he already had been playing with, and Shane Waldron, to more or less understand, it's not a huge learning curve in terms of what terminology might be for him moving to Seattle. Like, I think he's a home run hit. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong picking Gerald Everett this year.
Very nice pick, Clark.
I wanted to quickly say too, so this is on Fantasy Football Period 101 on Instagram. They do some good work, and they actually broke down a round by round percentage that the tight end, if you draft the tight end in this round, what's the percentage that they will finish a top 5 tight end looking over the last 4 seasons? If you draft a tight end in the 8th round or later, there's a 16% chance that they finish a tight end 5. If you draft between rounds 5 and 7, there's a 13% chance that they finish a tight end 5, finish tight end 5. If you draft your tight end rounds 1 through 4, it is a 73% chance that they will finish the tight end 5, at least the tight end 5. So again, we're putting numbers to the fact that you should draft your tight ends early. This trend of waiting on tight end is officially dead. But with that being said, Nick, if you were to draft tight end late, who would you draft?
It would be Gerald Everett's former teammate, Tyler Higbee. Higbee has flashed as a very good player. I was not interested in him last year because of Gerald Everett. People saw the 3 games that Everett played without Higbee, where he played really well, and then didn't pay attention to the fact that Everett was going to be healthy at the beginning of 2020, and they nuked each other's value. Neither of them, or they're not on the same team anymore. Los Angeles went out, they replaced their quarterback, they brought in Matthew Stafford, and they who left the oh my god, oh no, well, no, I'm thinking of receiver. Who's their third receiver? Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so they lost Reynolds, and while he was not a huge role player, he did play a pretty he was their number 3 receiver. They've got Van Jefferson now, who's supposedly going to take that role, or some version of Tutu Atwell, who is like 140 pounds.
Who's also was on the COVID list, or he wasn't practicing for some small period of time.
Yeah, I don't know what his deal is, but I can't imagine that guy's going to have a long career. And there's like an 80-year-old Deshaun Jackson. There's a lot of targets available for the number 3 pass catcher in this offense. I think it's going to be Gerald Everett, and I think just by volume, he actually could work his way into the top 5. I've got him as my tight end 6 after Mark Andrews this year.
Tyler Higbee.
To play the old man of the podcast here, one of these days, you guys are going to get to an age where people say when players are that age, they're 80 years old. And it's not something that you take personally because you get it, but it does hurt a little bit. Having said that, I think Tyler Higbee is a great shot to take. I think the Rams offense is going to be fantastic. This is an easy argument to make where you roll up the tight end position, even both guys, combining and giving that to one guy getting 80%. Tyler Higbee is right there as a good player. The Rams offense is clever enough for the tight end to be just left alone completely because they do the same formation and the same moves, and then it's a completely different play. So Higbee showed last year he is talented for sure. So yeah, this is a fine shot to take.
My one of my dynasty leagues is actually after last year where it got absolutely, my tight end position in one of my dynasty leagues last year got absolutely shredded by Nick. And now this year is getting really propped up by Nick because it has Tyler Higbee and Evan Ingram, both of whom Nick is like in on this year. So I'm a fan. I like what you're selling, Nick. I'll buy it. What I don't like, God, my transition game has been on point today, are players who are not targeting at their current ADP. No, sir, not me. And Clark, why don't you start us off with the tight end who you're not targeting in fantasy this year based on their ADP?
And this will be quick. It'll just be a repeat of our opening segment. Anyone who's not in the top 5, I don't want.
You can't disagree. We'll just move right along. It's a good point. My guy specifically, and again, I fully agree with Clark because this is I was kind of like, well, I'm not gonna tell you not to draft. I have done this in the past, back when we were on the previous site to which we worked for. I had a bold prediction, which was Travis Kelce was going to finish outside the top 5 tight end. And that's just never going to happen. Clark tweeted out the stat that he's been the tight end 1 in PPR since 2016, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. That the consistency is ridiculous. So I'm never going to tell you something stupid like that. The tight end who I think is not worth his current ADP, and I think is going to maybe let people down, is Logan Thomas. He was one of the least efficient tight ends last year with just 1.8 fantasy points per touch. And he finished high in 2020 just because Alex Smith peppered him with 110 targets. And so he was a high contributor from that standpoint. And that translated into a good fantasy production. I think he was like the tight end 6 or something last year. The targets are going to go down. The production's going to go down. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, De'Ami Brown, Antonio Gibson, JD McKissick. That's a lot of passing options in Washington for Ryan Fitzpatrick to find or connect to, and whomever he finds his allegiance to. I know he's liked tight ends in the past. He and Mike Gesicki had a pretty good connection, but I just think Logan Thomas's 2020 production was based solely on just seeing a shit ton of work. And I don't think that his efficiency is such that if he sees a decreased level of work in 2021, that he's going to still maintain a top 10 fantasy production at tight end, which is where he's going. He's going as the tight end 8 right now in the 7th round.
Yeah. So the team did invest in him like a week or two ago. I think they signed him with a 3-year deal.
Yeah, they signed him to a 3-year deal.
Million. But this one is like, it's such a process-oriented pick because you can look at the money and you can say, yeah, they liked him after what they saw him do last year. They wanted to pay him. So, hey, take the shot in the mid rounds on him. And then everything you just said, yeah, but now there's a bunch of players there that weren't there last year that are really good. And so, yeah, pick him if you want him. Otherwise, don't. And
I mean, again, like Clark is nailed the thunder of because he won't steal it. It's not stealing. He's right. It's the top 5 guys. You got to take them.
Yeah, there are good reasons to avoid Logan Thomas. And it's just, yeah.
Why are you even letting him down there? Clark. Clark, you're just on my mind right now. I look at you and I just think tight end. I'm just like, oh, Clark's our tight end guy. And so anytime I have a tight end question, I just go to Clark. Nick, do you have a specific tight end that you're not targeting this year? Or are you in the camp of just like, I'm going to take a top 3 guy and burn the rest down?
Yeah, I do have a specific guy. The Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes are over and he is not landing in Denver this year. It is going to be awfully hard for Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and another player to produce at a high level. So for me, it's Noah Fant. I'm worried about Jeudy, and I think he's the number 2 there. I think there are some folks who think it's going to be Sutton who's the number 2, but the point is 3 pass catchers in this offense is going to be so damn hard. Drew Lock is like some kind of Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, he'll launch it, but the insights that Cecil Lammey is able to provide on Football Guys podcast on the Audible, because he knows Locke's dad, are pretty interesting. And it's basically like his dad has told him that he needs to kind of work on his fundamentals, and he's just been really successful his whole life not doing that, and he's not going to do that. And so it's either him,
a resounding endorsement from your dad. Be like, hey, be better at your job at the fundamental level of your job.
To be fair, I feel like most dads probably think that about their 25-year-old kid.
Also true. Also true. Most dads are like, I wish you were fundamentally more sound. My dad is like, your podcasting skills? I wish you had more fundamentals in terms of transitioning. Well, wait till he hears this show, Dad.
Yeah, we're all agreed on the criticism from Dad in this department. And then the other option there is Teddy Bridgewater, and like Teddy is, Josh Norris talks about this all the time. He's got this reputation as being like a really consistent kind of short to intermediate area accurate passer, and he's really not. Like, he's just a great backup. Other than that, he's a backup for a reason. He doesn't like excel in any one area. I think it's going to be really hard for this offense to feature multiple productive pass catchers, and Fant going in like this. He's 6'09".
He's 6'11" right now, but still,
that is brutal, man. I mean, players going around like, God, come on. Brandon Ayuk is just a couple picks ahead. Higgins, if you want him, is there behind him. Chase Claypool is right behind him. Like, that's a really tough spot to burn a pick on a guy who, if he's lucky, is going to go like 605.
I need someone who's like a devout Noah Fant diehard to like come onto the show and tell me why we should be hyping up Noah Fant, because I feel like perpetually everyone is so high on him at the beginning of every year, and I haven't seen anything from him.
So I'm not a devout Noah Fant diehard, but the argument you make for Noah Fant is that you watch him play and he is very good at playing tight end. If he has a different quarterback that we feel is competent, I would be exceptionally excited about having him on my team, but he doesn't. Even with who he's been playing with, he's had a very good opening to his career as a second-year tight end. Having said all of that, he is in the situation that he's in right now. And so, like you said, Nick, I'm not interested in him.
Yeah, we saw Teddy Bridgewater support 2 top 24 wide receivers, and Ian Thomas, I think, caught like 5 balls for 10 yards and -3 touchdowns. So not exactly when you spread the ball around to the tight end position. All right, now let's get to our bold predictions. And it's time, let me get my phone all set up, to get rocked. I always end shorter than I anticipate. I already alluded to.
That's what she said.
Thanks, Nick. I couldn't get to my mute.
Well done, you guys. Well done. My dad's going to love that joke when he listens to the show to critique.
You know, I should have. Somebody, oh my God, I got hit by this the other day. Somebody said, she mentioned that. And I was like, that is way better. No one has heard that, right? It's like a next level. She said that
because that's what she said is like more of just like an in your face joke, where she mentioned that sounds more like I've had conversations with your presumed significant other, and they have said that you're whatever, you know,
like in your case, Pete, you don't last very long. You cut it off sooner than you think.
Right. She mentioned that. Like I talked to Becca, and when we were, you know, Nick and Becca have a text thread. Nick just checked in and he was like, "Hey, Bex, how's it going?" Becca's like, "You know, I hate to say this, Nick, but Pete just doesn't last very long." And it's like, Nick's like, "Nah, she mentioned that. She mentioned that in our text thread."
This got real, man.
This got real. this got real. All right. Well, I have a bold prediction. And it's not that I don't whatever. We're done with that. Nick already brought this up earlier, so my thunder has been slightly stolen. But Kyle Pitts breaks Mike Ditka's record for most receiving yards as a rookie tight end, which is 1,076. That's the tight end record that's lasted since all of the time that Mike Ditka was in the league. He maybe, if I wanted to get really bold, would say he breaks his touchdown record too, which is 12. That's I don't know if he's going to get 12. I do think I could see him getting 10. Like, to me, a realistic stat line for Kyle Pitts is like 110 plus targets, 85 catches, 1,100 yards, and 10 touchdowns. That's what when I draft Kyle Pitts, that's what I'm envisioning for him. And so obviously that breaks the record for Mike Ditka, and that's my stat line, and that's my bold prediction.
Well, we know if Pitts is going to play the Julio Jones role, he will not catch 12 touchdowns because Matt Ryan hated throwing touchdowns to Julio Jones.
Good point, Clark Barnes. Nailed it. Yeah, he just has to play the tight end role. Rodney White. Didn't Rodney White score a lot of touchdowns for them? There you go.
I don't know, but I like this. This is bold. I'm looking back the last 3 years. There have been a total of 8 occurrences in which tight ends have cleared the 1,000-yard mark in the last 3 years. I think your bold prediction is aided by the 17-game season, but still, like it's really damn hard to post 4 figures as a tight end.
Yeah, I like that 17-yard mark, 17-game mark. I always forget about that, and it's like always like, oh yeah, no, that actually will help any statistical bet that I make. I should take more of that and make more bets by that. Clark, give us your bold prediction for the tight ends this year.
My bold prediction is that your sleeper tight end is not going to return any value.
To peel back the onion curtain, we share what our answers are going to be on our Slack channel before the show, just to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes. So I know what Clark is going to say, and I still just find it absolutely hilarious every single time. It still always somehow catches me off guard that like the advice is just, it's just the bold prediction. Your pick will suck unless it is one of the top 3 guys. And it's honestly not wrong. It's the of all the bold predictions we've made on this show throughout this entire, positional breakdowns over the last 4 weeks, it's probably the one most likely to come true. Nick, wrap us up.
My bold prediction is that Gerald Everett is going to score double-digit touchdowns, which is also really hard to do at the tight end position. But I like Shane Waldron coming to Seattle. The pace is going to be way up this year. And so David Moore left in the offseason, and he's been there for a really long time as a number 3 receiver. They're trying to replace him with Dwayne Eskridge, who I don't know, for most people, like, there seems to be a chorus of people who are really interested in him, but I just am not seeing it. He's very old, and that's not a good sign when someone is able to like kind of produce as in college and they're old, because that's kind of just like old man strength defeating these 19-year-old kids. So it's going to kind of be a battle between Everett and Dwayne Eskridge. So in Everett, you have a veteran who has produced at a high level at the tight end position. And then at Eskridge, you've got a rookie. They brought in the Rams' former offensive coordinator. So I like this pairing a lot. I could see the yardage department being maybe a little bit lacking. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 600 yards and 10 touchdowns or something like that. But I think that there's the outside chance that Gerald Everett can find the end zone a lot in the Seahawks' newly upped pace offensive attack.
Last year, between Jacob Hollister, Greg Olsen, and Will Dissly, the tight end position was targeted 22 times in the red zone. So, I mean, if Gerald Everett is stepping into even 20 red zone targets, which is 4 more than Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf last year, then that's a pretty good bet for double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, I like diving into the depth chart there, and Eskridge is on the pup right now. It's early. It's way early in camp. Sometimes teams will do this so that they can have another guy or put themselves in a position to not commit to someone that they know they're going to commit to so that they can have another body. So that may change very quickly, but right now, not off to a great start.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That's all we got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast and your podcast platform of choice. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself at Pete M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. We will be back at you next week. Make sure to check out all of the amazing content we're putting out over on the site, nerdballff.com. Until next week, my fellow nerds.